the recording. Okay, so today's topic is on 1 point perspective. So we get this video camera straight. And 1 point perspective is something that people sometimes shy away from or find mentally exhausting, which I totally get. So we're going to do something to make it easy and hopefully fun and hopefully enlightening and straightforward, right? So it's not too complicated or confusing. But also, seriously, anytime you have questions, please just unmute yourself or type in the chat box. So what is 1 point perspective would be a good place to start. It's where all the lines, the supposed lines, are sort of going to 1 point in our drawing or the thing that we're looking at. And we'll look at some examples here in a second. But the classic example is if you think of railroad tracks going off into the distance, right? Or looking down a street, even in a room. Right? It's where all the lines sort of converge at 1 point on the horizon. And we'll go over just some basic vocabulary as well. It's also important to understand why we even need to know this. Why we need to know it, it can actually be really useful in drawing for creating space, right? Like a sense of real depth, but believable space, right? So where everything is sort of hanging together and sitting in the same place. So this will help us understand, it's kind of a mental exercise of how to sort of make everything hang in the same plane or space. So they're related to each other and create a believable sense of distance. What else do I want to say? There's sort of a few vocabulary words that are helpful, so we always know what we're talking about. We're on the same page. And I have just a very simple diagram of this, but when we say horizon line, the horizon line is always your eye line. So I could be laying on the ground, I could be standing on top of a mountain. The horizon line is always where your eye line is. It's great because you can think about the whole world centers around you and your point of view. And the horizon line is always where the sea meets the sky. So we can't actually always see that, right? Only in certain occasions, like when we're at the beach. But no matter if I'm standing on the actual beach or on a mountain overlooking the sea, at that point, the horizon line is always your eye line. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And it's pretty easy to remember, right? The horizon line is where I'm looking. Then we have something that's important to know as a sort of reference point is the vanishing point. So it's where all the lines come together and converge. So in 1 point perspective, it's 1 point. So it's like if we have railroad tracks, all the lines are going and meeting at the horizon in 1 point. And that point is going to be where I'm looking. Now, it's important to say that perspective that we use in drawing is constructed because we actually have two eyes that have two different points on our head. So perspective is like as if we were a camera or only had one eye. So in a way, it's constructed, like we have to sort of think about it and plan it out a little bit. It's a little bit of a mental exercise, but just like anything and everything, the more you do it, the less you have to think about it, the more sort of instinctual it becomes. So I just want to show I'm going to share my screen. So I want to show some visual things of what it is we're talking about. So this is what I'm talking about. The horizon line, right, is just your eye line. And this is the vanishing point and parallel lines. So if I'm standing here, looking straight ahead, everything to my side, right, is pointing in this direction and sort of ending up there. Like if I drew long lines, they would end up here. I'll show you what I mean though. Let's see, sorry. Uh-oh, now I have to go and find these again. Sorry, 1 second. So, okay. Thanks for bearing with me. Okay, so a famous example that we can use is Van Gogh's Room, right? Everyone knows this painting. So here it's been mapped out as 1-point perspective. So now we can sort of look at this drawing from a technical, or this painting, sorry, from a technical point of view. So this would be like if I'm standing up, or he was standing up, this red line is the horizon line, which is where his eye line is. And so all the things, like the big furniture, right, the lines are ending up here, and they sort of all follow this line. Even the things that are above, right, above the eye line are going in this direction. I just want to show you a couple, this is a beautiful Van Gogh drawing, and it's a perfect example, right, of this perspective from the road, and even the tops of the trees. Right here, it's really exaggerated angle. And here's a beautiful painting by Gustave Courbet. My French is not good. Pont d'Europe, anyway, European bridge in Paris, right? So this is like painted from the point of view of somebody, a passerby or an observer, also standing on the bridge. You see how the lines of the pavement, but also of the bridge, they all go to meet and converge here at the vanishing point. Okay. This, of course, I have to use this example because the School of Athens is a very famous painting by Raphael done here in Rome, in the Renaissance, so in the early 1500s. And this is a perfect example. See how all the lines on the floor, and then the architecture really gives this a very strong sense of perspective. So even though all these people are, gathering about, this is the vanishing point. And here it's also the focal point, right? This really strong lines make you look right here in the middle at the two philosophers. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to learn, we're going to go through a little step-by-step of how to construct this without looking at any particular example, just so we can kind of understand it mentally, how it works. And then we'll look at an example and draw it on our own, like construct it. But I think it's easier if we sort of go through this step-by-step together. So you'll just need a piece of paper and a pencil, and we'll get started. So an eraser can help, but we may not need it at all. So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to look at these images together. So if you have any questions, or really just interrupt, please unmute yourself because I won't be able to see the chat box. So really speak out at any point and ask any questions as we go. And we're just going to draw together for this first exercise. So let's see. Okay, so what we're going to do is these are kind of the steps which go from the top left in the right direction and then progress from the bottom left to the right. But what we're going to do is just start at the beginning, which is on a piece of paper, please draw a square. Obviously, it doesn't have to be a perfect square. It doesn't have to be measured, but you want to draw a square with an X. So we're just going to draw this first box here. Okay. Now, don't make it so huge that it fills up the whole paper, but don't make it so tiny that you can't draw inside of it, because we're going to draw inside of the square. So maybe just something that's in the middle of tiny and huge. And the best way you can, make a pretty even X so that we have a good center point. And then make sort of a dot, right, or a filled in circle right in the center. Now, we're going to move to the second one where we put another square inside the square. And when you do this, you see how they make these triangles pointing towards the dot in the center. Just kind of see that they're pretty much equal, right? Like they have the equal amount of space in them. Okay. Okay. So this dot that is in the center right here, this is our vanishing point, which means we are standing and looking with our one eye, like as if we're a cyclops. And this is our vanishing point. So this is where we're looking. Now let's move to the third one, and this third square here, and just draw a line across horizontally where the dot is, as best as you can. I mean, obviously it doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Now, what they've done in this drawing here is they've erased the little cross X's outside of this smaller square that we drew. So if you want to, you can go ahead and erase those out, or you can leave them in. When you're drawing, it's really helpful to leave these lines, I find, and we call them construction lines, right? So you can kind of follow them as you're drawing, or you can erase them, sort of, whatever seems to make the most sense to you. Okay. Now, what we have, right, is a room. Now we've started to create a room where we're standing on one end and we're looking right down to this far wall. Don't worry if you don't see it yet. It's fine. So let's draw in this. We're going to make a doorway on the left. So just follow these steps here of making, so make sure this vertical line, these two vertical lines are actually vertical, right? Like they're pretty straight. Okay. And then it looks like the next step down here is all they did was, see how like we created the top of the door. To create the bottom, or it's like a hallway going into another room, you just make this little foot here. And that gives the sense of space. And if you want, you can erase the little line that will be here, or you can just leave it, whichever is easier for you to see it and visualize your doorway. So next, we're going to move to the right side, and we're going to draw two vertical lines, and they're going to be both above and below the horizon line. Now, this brings up a good point. But first, so from the center, you see that you connect the top of these verticals it's slanting down. And these are slanting, this line is slanting up, right? Because one is above our eye line and the other is below. Now you might have to elongate your, you know, these vertical lines here on the right is longer, right? Okay, so the thing that this brings up is anything that is above your eye line is going to be, right, slanting down to come and meet it. And anything that's below is going to be coming up to meet your eyes, right? If you remember, everything focuses around your point of view. You're the center of the world. So in drawing, especially. So if you think about anything that's above your eye line has to come down to meet your eyes. And anything that's below, like if you're standing in a road, like the line of the road, right, is below your eye line. So it has to come up or be slanted up to come and meet your eyes. Okay, so I think this drawing is just meant to show if you erase all of the extraneous lines, right, this is what it will look like. You can do that or not. So here we're putting in some floorboard lines, kind of like in Van Gogh's bedroom. So if you want to, you can go ahead and from the center line, make these radiate out to the floor. I'm going to do that. Okay, cool. Okay. Now, there are a few more steps that are here from top to bottom. Well, this is just showing us what our drawing should look like right now, more or less. Now, this is really great. We're going to add this square on the ceiling. So we understand how one-point perspective works when we're drawing it from above our eye line. Right? This is the ceiling. So you can draw two horizontal lines and then connect them to the center. Let's see. Okay. And then here in the last one, they've added like, I don't know, it looks like a TV or a painting and a fireplace. Now, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, on this one, because, so you can see it a little better, because since this is where we're looking, it's flat, right? It's just head on. So we don't have any side perspective. So if you want to draw something in the center, you can. Mine has like 1,000 little lines in it, but I'll draw something in there.
Kelly?
Yes.
Could you tell us, I mean, I know it, but I feel like it might help me to know, where's the dot in that last drawing?
Yeah, it's like right here. So it's just in the exact center of this square. So I would say it's right between this like painting and the fireplace, right in the center.
Got it.
Yeah, thanks, Pierre. Okay, that's a good question. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing now. Just one more second. And then, okay, so are there any questions? Does this seem silly? Does it make sense? Is it too simple? Like, do you have questions? Is anything unclear? Is this helpful? I don't know. I'd just love to hear from anyone.
Kelly, this is
Yeah.
Diane.
Hi there.
I found particularly the ceiling very useful because I always have a hard time when I try and put something in the ceiling, and this really explained it. So thank you.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's a good point because it's like sometimes we don't think about above versus below. So one thing is, another thing that I want to give you as a tool that's very helpful is can always use your pencil to find the angle of something, right? This is very theoretical. It's very helpful, but it's also very theoretical. And so rarely do real things all line up perfectly, vanishing to one point, right? So it's not really the most realistic situation, but also sometimes you'll find yourself in the, like wondering, what? Wait, I'm confused. So one thing you can do is holding your arm perfectly straight, which is important, with your elbow straight, and closing one eye. If I'm looking for the angle of something, I can use my pencil or pen and holding it parallel, so not bending forward or back, right? Sorry?
You were just frozen for a second, and now you're back. Just wanted to let you.
Okay. Okay, yeah, can everyone see and hear okay?
I can, Donna.
Okay. So one thing you can do to find the angle of something without a lot of theoretical having constructed in your mind, use your pencil as if it were the hand of a clock. You just hold your arm straight, close one eye, and you see this dresser here behind me. I can try and find the angle by holding my pencil and thinking about what time is it, right? It's not 9 o'clock, it's something like 8 o'clock. And then I can hold up my paper and sort of compare, right, the angle and carry it over to my paper. It's also important to close one eye. We naturally have a dominant eye, so you'll sort of instinctively close your weaker eye. That's a good way to find an angle if you're not sure or feeling confused, and without having to remember all kinds of theory. But one thing you can keep in mind is things that are above you. See this painting on the wall behind me? It's above my eye line, or above the computer camera, right? So it's slanting down to come and meet the computer camera's eye line. And then see this line here, it's like the edge of the sofa. It's pointing up, right, to come and meet the camera's eye. So things that are above will be coming down generally to meet your eyes, and things that are below will be coming up. So that goes for things that are on the ceiling. Clouds have perspective, right, because they're coming to meet the horizon. We see the underside of clouds, especially the closer they get to us. So remembering to look up is also important. Okay, so questions. So someone asked, Jan asked, when you're beginning a painting, you decide what perspective you want to use. That's a really good question, right? Because we have 1, 2, and 3 points of perspective. The third point we don't use as often. It's kind of just, if you're painting from life or sketching from life, you'll think about 2-point perspective is when you see like 2 sides of something, right? And 1-point perspective is where it's all sort of running together. So I kind of just look and, yeah, sometimes you make decisions about 1-point perspective, like in Raphael's School of Athens. It's a really strong device, right, for leading your eye or the viewer to a really specific point. So it's a good thing to think about, and it's a really good question, right? It's definitely something to keep in mind. And, you can do some little small sketches and test it out first. Okay, did that answer your question? Does anyone else have questions? Okay. Okay. Hi,
Hello.
April and Joanna.
Hello. Yeah, explain the cloud thing again.
Okay,
How would you use like a cloud with this? I didn't understand that.
yeah, I know. Okay, that's a really great question. So, see, I'm gonna draw like this is my horizon line. Let me put my screen big. Okay, if this is my horizon line, and I'm this is my vanishing point. Okay, and I'm standing right like here on the ground. The clouds also, let me, here in the sky, have the same vanishing point from my perspective. So clouds, right, they can look like, you can sort of imagine them as square or rectangles. So, okay, so let's say this is the front. If it was a rectangle, which it's not, right? They're round rectangles, and clouds have different cloud formations have different shapes. But those big puffy storm clouds, right? They this is the front side of a cloud, and this is the underside of the cloud, which is usually darker because it's receiving less light. So cloud, and as it gets closer to the horizon here, we'll see less and less of the underside, right? But in Florida, especially, go outside. They have the most like beautiful clouds. So if you go outside in Florida and start to look at the clouds, you see they have perspective. So they're bigger when they're closer to you, and they're running towards the horizon, getting smaller, but they're going toward the vanishing point, just like railroad tracks, a road, buildings, everything else. So this is a sort of very rough, childish diagram of it. Like I could make, you know, a whole bunch of clouds, but they also sort of stay in a line if you start to observe them. But you know, they'll be like all next to each other, and then they're vanishing, getting smaller as they go to the horizon. Does that answer your question or make it?
Answering my question. It's very hard.
Yeah. So,
But I understand.
I should find a
But I understand what you're saying.
and show it to you. Right. So it's like that. It's like the square. It's just like the square on the ceiling here, right? Like if we're in a room and this is like a, say, the skylight, it's just the same thing, except it has it's like a three-dimensional box instead of a flat box. But we can get into that another time, maybe. But if you go outside and observe clouds, I think you might start to see how they sort of go in a line, right? And the thing of things that are closer to us appear bigger, right, larger, and then as they go away from us, they get smaller, proportionately. You know, some things far away are bigger, but for the most part, that's sort of the rule. But go outside and observe clouds, or you know, from your window, and see if you can see the perspective of clouds. And see if you can even draw them. I mean, they're constantly moving, but see if you can sketch some clouds in perspective. Yes. Okay. Okay, someone says they lost the video. I'm going to turn off my video for a second. Okay. Okay. So what I'd say is I took a photograph in my house I took two, one in my kitchen and one in my hallway. So thanks so much, Marsha, for letting me know. So we can try and sketch these and see what problems we encounter, if any, right? So we're gonna look at a picture, and I think they're both sort of maybe narrow and tall, vertical. And think about, you don't have to actually know where the horizon line is, but you can actually figure it out because all the lines point to it. So I'm gonna share my video, share my screen with you for a second, and I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about. So here's a photograph of my hallway. Now, I don't have to know instinctively where the vanishing point and horizon line are because all the lines here tell me. So if I follow this, right, it goes here. Now, if I follow this, right, as if this doorway weren't, it goes here. So they should meet somewhere here. So there are lines here on the ceiling as well. They will all converge to a point somewhere around here. Now here there is the doorway, just like we drew in the last one. Now the top of it will come the same and meet here. So do you guys we'll try just to take a few minutes and draw this out. And it doesn't have, the thing about it is, if you're an artist and not an architect, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be believable, right? So it looks like everything's sort of in the same space. It doesn't have to be an architectural rendering. So let's just take, I'd say, 5 minutes, maybe don't need that long, and sketch out from this photo. And then if you have any problems or questions, this is the perfect way to figure out, what you understand and what you don't. Okay, so I'm just going to talk maybe 4 or 5 minutes. And let's try and draw this to see, what we understand and what we have trouble with. Okay. Okay, just a little bit more than a minute, and we'll see how it's going. Okay. Okay, let's stop. Okay, so how did it go? Was it challenging? Was it easy? Were you lost? Was it, how was it? What happened? I'll show you my sketch. It looks something like this, right? Hard, yeah. Okay, so great. Now, maybe I didn't give you enough to work with. I'm not sure. So what was the hard part?
For me, the hard part was sticking to your linear assignment. I just wanted to draw everything I could see. Draw at the end of the hall. I like that little vignette. I tried.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Great. It's hard to just sit there and make straight lines. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So somebody said my proportions were wrong. Right. So I totally get that. Mine were wrong too. And I just sort of like moved my lines around, and yeah. So proportions are wrong. So one thing that's helpful is to sort of sketch in very light lines at first. And then, you can kind of move them around until you feel like they're in the right place, right? Because we didn't talk about, distances or widths. So you can, measure, for example, to understand, the height versus the width of things. Right. So today we're just focusing on the perspective. Hello.
Hello. Okay, I learned that it's not a big X on a rectangle. That it was all the lines coming out of the vanishing point, right? As opposed to
Right.
they do your circle, your little vanishing point, and then you shoot the lines out from that place.
Yeah, so you can do it either way. And it's kind of like whatever makes most sense to you, right? So you don't necessarily know where the vanishing point is. You do because all the lines are pointing to it, right? So if I sort of lightly sketch in, okay, where are the floor lines? Where are the ceiling lines? If you sort of sketch those in, you'll see they really come to meet pretty much at one point. So if you don't know where that vanishing point is, you find it. And then once you've got that, you can sort of build the rest from there. Or if you feel like you know where the vanishing point is, you can start there and build the rest from that. So you can work either way, if that makes sense.
Yes, that makes sense now. That's totally different than what I thought. So I get it. So basically, you look at whatever you're looking at to create the vanishing point, obviously, and then you can then you take that vanishing point and then use the less angles for that. In other words, you create the big angles at first, the main structure of the hallway, to determine where the vanishing point is, and then you come back and do the doorway based on what you made with the vanishing point.
Yeah, that makes, yeah, because that could make, in a little bit, it's like you have to find a way that makes sense to you. So yeah, if you, sorry, I'm trying to get my big screen back. Right, so if I'm not sure, the vanishing point is exactly where I'm looking if I have one eye, right? So, but you might not be exactly sure where that is. You might think you know, right? Like, oh, it's exactly in the middle of the doorway. But as I drew this, I realized actually it was a little bit more to one side of the doorway. So yeah, it's helpful if you lightly sketch first. And you can use the big lines of like the ceiling, you know, the where the walls meet the floor. Sort of sketch those in, and when you sketch them in, you'll see they're kind of all pointing to one place. Now, something you can also do is, if you close one eye, and you put your pencil, at some point, it'll like block your vision. You can also tell where the vanishing point is that way. But yeah, so you can find the vanishing point and then work out from there in a more decisive way. I hope that helps. Okay. Okay, anyone else? Comments, questions?
Hey, Kelly, this is Pierre. For me,
Yeah.
the angle of the lines was so surprising. How steep they had to be to get the perspective right for the doors and the side stuff. It's just it's like I just would not do that with the naked eye without measuring. I would measure totally differently. It'd be much higher, right? Less acute, I guess. Anyway, so that was really, but it really helped
Yeah,
with the room.
that's a good point because using your pencil like the hand of a clock to find angles is a reality check for your brain. It's actually really helpful because, like you said, somehow we think we know what the angles, or we have an idea, but it may not be based in reality, right? Or, it's really good to use your pencil to sort of override your brain. That's cool. Yeah. So, right, angles can be surprising. Sometimes they're going the opposite way from how you drew them. It's like they sort of trick something in our brain sometimes. So it's good to have, right, this as a reality check. Okay, cool. Okay, does anyone else want to share, ask questions, make comments? Now, I know this is a little bit, right, it's not maybe as fun a topic, but it's actually a really important topic because once you really practice and get the hang of it and it comes naturally, then it can help create a believable space easily. Okay.
Hi, I'm Carolina here. I actually,
Carolina.
the first time I told you I'm, I mean, I don't even know how to draw a toothpick. So, I thought, oh, great, maybe, my father is an architect. Maybe this I can handle a little better, but no, a total disaster. I realized I couldn't even really give an idea of the difference between like the ceiling and the floor. I mean, so it is difficult for me, but even though, I kept looking at the squares from before and I thought it was going to be easier till I tried. So I'm, it's challenging, but it's fun. I'd like to, I couldn't, I don't know.
Yeah, conceptualize, right. Well, it's actually, it gets a little tense.
I can't hear you well.
Confusing. Please. Okay. Yes. Can you hear me okay? No.
Now, yes. Now, yes.
Okay. Sorry. Sometimes it's the video. Yeah. So I totally get it. No, it's something that really has to sort of take step by step and practice a bunch of time.
No, it's disturbed. I don't know if
I'll post that
I don't know if
on our Facebook group, the steps, right? And I think we. Are people having trouble hearing? And are you having trouble hearing? I'm sorry, my internet's not good. Hello?
Echo. Am I the only one having trouble?
Okay.
Do you hear me?
No, I don't think you are the only one. Okay. Okay, yeah, so let me repeat what I was saying. I'll make it for a moment to hopefully help. I was saying, what I'll do, I think this is something where this is just a small introduction, so it's hard to, right, it's a lot to practice and cover. So we have a Facebook page, and I can post the square step by step images that we did, and I think drawing it step by step over several times would maybe help to see the process and which steps, like to start putting it together. Okay. Yeah, I'm having trouble with the sound. So Donna says, I want to revert to my imagination and let it be less correct perspective. Believe it, lack of discipline. No, I mean, the thing is, this isn't for everyone, right? If you want to, it's a helpful, it can be a helpful tool in your toolbox. Right. I think it's nice to be able to have a choice, right? When you want to draw something but you're unable to, like you don't have the technical know-how to, that can be frustrating. So this can be a tool to help you in your drawing. But you can, these lessons are varied for a reason. So if you think, oh, this is not interesting to me, you don't have to use it. You can just move on. Okay. Okay. Okay, sorry you guys. Somebody's saying this is really cool stuff. And somebody says it's totally fun. Okay, I hope you can hear me. Does anybody else want to share or ask a question, make comments? Okay, Donna says makes sense. Okay, well, that is it for today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording now, and then I'll share the step-by-step images, both in the email newsletter and on our Facebook page, so that if you want to go back and copy them, I think going over it slowly